Good afternoon, ladies and... Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Heavy Repping. My name is John Tron Davidson, and I'm here once again in our super best, elephant-free, chicken best test location in the southwest of England. So this week's video sees episode 2 of
The Science.
And in it I'm going to be talking about one of my all-time favourite materials, rather recent acquisition as it happens, but a material that is known as Tagua. So what, you might be wondering, is Tagua doing in the Plectroverse? It is, after all, a material that's used for many other things and comes all the way from Ecuador. But do not worry, dear watcher, for I am about to explain. In order to understand how we've got to this stage where we've got companies making picks out of this material, we need to understand what Tagua is and where it came from. So, Tagua is the endospermic element of the ivory palm tree, whose technical name is Phytelophas equatorialis or Phytelophas macrocarpa. And it's found in Peru, Ecuador and Bolivia, amongst a couple of other places. But it starts out, and it's a really interesting process this. So when the seeds form, they're actually in a liquid state. The tree will produce about 50 to 75 seeds in a burr, and those then fall from the tree naturally when they reach maturity, which means that it's a very easy product to harvest. That means it's safe for the workers, it means there's no special machinery required to get it down, and crucially, it means that, unlike in the process of woodworking, it means that the tree doesn't have to be damaged in order for us to gain access to this item. Following on from being in their liquid state, over the course of a few weeks, the Tagua then starts to harden and ossify, and over a period of about 2 years, though I read varying reports about this, it becomes rock hard. Now when I say rock hard, what I mean is that it is the same or very similar consistency to both mammal ivory and bone, but it's actually harder wearing than both of those. Interestingly, the nut, when it forms, I read a lot of reports about this. I want to get my figures right, but something like 95% of the nuts have a void in the centre. That's because there is, on the nut itself, there's always a little sort of nodule, and that nodule is where the nut joined the tree, and that will continue on into the centre of the nut, which means that when people are when they're turning them, using them on a lathe, for example, because the Taguas used to make a lot of like small pots and jewellery and that sort of thing, there will always be a hole somewhere in it, there will always be a void somewhere in the nut, which means that even though they're quite small and they look really dense and very hard, it takes, quite a steady hand to work with them. There's a number of cracking videos out there of people working Tagua, one in particular which I'll put in the description, and the guy's really into it, and it's actually wonderful to see. So one of the great things about this material is that because it's so tough, and because it lasts so well, and because the nuts fall to the ground as soon as they are mature, it means that it's a lot less environmentally damaging, and it's a much more plentiful resource than cutting the noses off elephants and walruses. Part of the reason for that is the fact that the trees, having grown, they grow 20 to 40 feet, but they live for 180 years, give or take. And in that time, they'll produce 3 crops a year of this stuff. Now, to put that in perspective, the amount of Tagua, vegetable ivory, that one of the ivory palm trees will produce in a year is the same as a female elephant does in her lifetime. Now, that is part of the reason why Tagua's going through a bit of a resurgence at the moment, but it wasn't always such a exciting and unique material to work with. I think part of the reason why so many people are going for Tagua over plastic in the broader world is because obviously it isn't plastic, and there's a lot more sort of environmental conscious activity going on now. From the plectries that I've spoken to who have used it as a material, they said actually it's not a super difficult material to work with. It's kind of a little bit like working with wood, in the sense that because of that void that exists in the nut as standard, it does mean that you get to a certain point, and I've seen guys who are using it for woodworking, especially making smaller vessels, that they've had to fill it with super glue a little bit because of cracks and fissures. But that is the same as working with wood. And really, because the nuts are quite small and they're not all that expensive, it does mean that it's a viable alternative to plastic in the long run. Part of the thing that's so good about it actually is the fact that, much like plastic, Tagua can be dyed any colour you like. There's some brilliant pictures. Even if you just Google Tagua, you'll see all of the different colours that it can be dyed into, and there's this wonderful side of it where a lot of people incorporate the natural layout of the nut into the designs that they're making. This is all great and everything, but why is it in the pick universe? Well, the simple fact of the matter is, because it's very hard wearing and it's environmentally abundant and it can be dyed any colour you like, it's actually a great material for making picks out of. Now, I have a couple of picks made from bone and they're polished to a very high sheen. I've also got a lot of stuff made from wood. I tend to find that wood, while it has wonderful tonal properties, especially when it comes to a lack of string noise, it does wear down quite quickly. That's its nature, especially if it's been satin finished rather than lacquered. If you lacquer the wood, it tends to chirp quite badly, and it only preserves it a little bit more, so all of the benefits of using wood kind of get eroded. Whereas with Tagua, it's much tougher. If you get it a little bit damp, like if your hands get a little bit sweaty, and I covered this in the first episode of the Sunday special, when your hands get a little bit damp, it becomes quite sticky. So if I take this one here and just put it on my lip like that, I'm not holding it on with anything, and it's just going to stay on my face, which is quite cool. As you play with it, it starts to mould to your finger a little bit, which increases the grip. And I have to say, in terms of its actual tonal conduct, one of the great things about this is it feels, I think partly because it's actually been alive, whereas plastic was never alive. It's this man-made sort of construct. Because these are at their core pure cellulose that's actually been part of a living thing, it feels more like that when you're playing with it. So speaking of its tonal properties, there's quite a lot of beef in the bottom end. It's very clear at the top as well. I tend to find that with bone, except that bone, when it's polished, it chirps like nothing on earth. It's like a balloon flying away from you or something. But with Tagua, it's warmer, it's deeper, and because when I get Tagua picks, they tend to be buffed to a relatively satiny finish, they don't have as much string noise, so it's a much more pleasurable experience than bone. I would also say that the thicker, like with most materials, the thicker you go, the more power you get. So if you would like to experience this material, and I would strongly advise that you do, especially incidentally if you are either an acoustic player or somebody who plays a lot of jazz, rather than using horn picks, this stuff is way tougher and way less brittle than horn. There are 3 companies that I would recommend, the first of which is the Alpha company of Tagua, and that is Howling Monkey out of Rochester, New York. Brian, who makes all of the Howling Monkey stuff, he only uses Tagua as his material. He's got a lot of experience with it. He hand shapes every pick, so they all come out a little bit different in terms of thickness, but they are consistent across the range. Does everything from like a Jazz 3 tri-corner shape all the way up to your gypsy style saucer. I've always had really good dealings with him, and he's a good cat. Company number 2, and for those of you who are gypsy orientated, I can very strongly recommend this, is Pleks, who are based out of Italy. Pedro, who makes those, is he's actually a Brazilian guy and an architect of all things, but he got into Tagua production quite a number of years ago, and he'll make all of his plectrums from either Delrin or Tagua. I've had both. I think his designs do really lend themselves very well to Tagua, and he makes them a little bit thicker because he makes a lot of minutiae stuff for gypsy jazz. So very, very strong recommendation. Also, he will do any of his styles, I think, apart from the Rob Check, which is a Delrin signature model. He'll do all of his styles in Tagua. So you've always got the option of getting both, which I recommend you do. The third company is Suibhne Guitars in Canada, and Mr. Suibhne does make from a lot of exotic stuff. He does stuff out of bone, wood, Tagua, epoxy, acrylic, kerinite, peak, all sorts of things, but he's a big fan of Tagua as well. He tends to use it as a component in the overall plectrum, as distinct from the entire plectrum, but expect a full review here at Heavy Ripping, of course. So, I hope you've enjoyed this little sojourn through the fantastic world of Tagua. I've left a couple of video links in the description so you can have a look at Tagua actually being shaped and used. And if you want to know what it's like as a material for playing with, I will be putting up a video review of some of these picks in due course. There is an existing video of me reviewing 5 alternatives to the Jazz 3, which includes the Howling Monkey Triaxis, and you can go and have a view at that elsewhere at youtube.com/heavyrepping. But in the meantime, my name is John Tron Davidson. This is Heavy Repping. I will be back next Tuesday night, which is our new time, with more information from the Plectroverse. But I hope that if you're not sure what to do in life, you will remember to rep hard and rep heavy.